alive, ladies and gentlemen. You are once again welcome to the Kingdoms podcast. And today I have with me a very, very special guest, the author of the book Heal Yourself. And of course, she's not a fighter, but I would say she's a fighter in life. So she's fighting out of Espanol in Europe, Spain. Welcome, Sarah Dawkins. How are you, Sarah?
Thank you, Admiral. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All good in the hood, you know.
Always.
We like to make the rhymes in the UK. You are 1 hour ahead of me. Does that mean you have seen the future ahead of me?
I think so, yes. The hour, the whole hour.
Uh, Interesting. Welcome, on board. Welcome to the Kingdoms podcast. It is, if you have seen the tagline of the podcast, it is about sharing the stories of extraordinary people and dissecting hard topics. So, that being said, you are an extraordinary person dedicating yourself to the service of humanity and making impact, in this world, in this generation, and you are highly appreciated, and that is why we have you on the pod today. So,
Thank
can
you.
you please share a bit about your own journey, from struggling with your own health issues and suicidal despair to finding wellness and vibrant health?
Yes, thank you. I was raised in the medical model, so my core beliefs were when you're sick, you go to a doctor, you get a diagnosis, you get pills, and the pills make you better. And I believed that for 41 years
Wow.
until one of my nurse colleagues, we moved to America forever, and that forever lasted 2 years, but that's another story. One of my nurse colleagues questioned my use of pharmaceuticals at home. When you think, well, this is what we do, this is what nursing, doctors, medical's all about. So I went away and started doing some research at home. And I learned about how powerful our mind is and how our body functions and can heal itself. And the thought, when we get a cut or a bruise, we never stop and think, I wonder how I'm going to heal that. I'll take it to the doctor. Our body heals. So extrapolating that out, why could our body not heal anything else? And I started to read blogs and found people were healing themselves of all sorts of things. So being a nurse, my first steps into natural healing were along the physical path, as in nutrition, hydration, sleep, exercise. So I started cleaning up my diet, a bit more walking, de-stressing, and within about a month I'd healed psoriasis, eczema and acid reflux. So now I'm starting to see tangible results in my own body from what I'm doing in my life, which previous to that, it was never even thought like that. That would never enter my mind to even step outside of pharmaceuticals. It would be, I've got acid, I'll take a pill. I've got eczema, I'll put some steroid cream on it. That
Acid
was,
reflux. That resonates very much with me. I've always have it, Gaviscon.
yeah, no, I lived on Gaviscon, and before that,
Whoa.
magnesium trisilicate, and it was just, but by cleaning up my diet and
Mm.
de-stressing, the acid reflux stopped.
Wow,
And I'd
really?
had decades on medication for it. So
It's
now I'm
wild.
seeing absolutely the,
Mm.
the results in my own body from what I'm doing. So I'm
Mm.
thinking, I wonder if I can extrapolate this even further. And I went on to heal candida, chronic pain, underactive thyroid, burned out adrenal glands, PTSD,
Mm.
and the depression with suicidal thoughts, as well as
Wow.
bulimia nervosa. So by tweaking, making, and it was during the depression actually that I realized, looking back, that I started at some point, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years in, I started to practice gratitude and mindfulness,
Mm.
which obviously is helpful in healing. And I tried meditation at first. I really sucked at it because, I'm sitting on the floor cross-legged going, because I knew nothing about meditation.
Yoga.
Yeah, but this voice on my shoulder was saying all sorts of negative things. So I
Mm.
ended up doing some guided meditations, which I found would silence this voice and help me to make the pictures in my mind
Mm.
and go on that journey. So initially I just did sort of 5 minutes a day, looking for inner peace. I just wanted to feel better and more at peace with myself. And that then led me on to starting to look at what kind of a future did I want for myself. And I knew that I desperately needed to leave my job, because at home I'm doing all the natural healing and different aspects of it. But at work, I'm giving out pills and helping people through surgery. So there was a real disparity in my life, and I knew I needed to step away from that. But I still wanted to be a nurse. I still aligned with Sarah the nurse. Didn't know anything about health coaching at the time. So there was a whole authenticity battle going on inside me then. Who am I if I'm not a nurse? And so I
That's an
set it,
identity crisis.
isn't it massive? And that led me into setting up my first business. So I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I'm still going to be a nurse entrepreneur. And I won awards for that business, but I was still having that internal battle. Who am I? You know, I'm still aligning with nurse, but I've sidestepped now and become entrepreneur nurse. And eventually I realized that about health coaching, and I thought that's the way I need to go forwards, to help people to see that they too can heal themselves, and help them, guide them to find that within themselves, the root cause of their dis-ease, and to work alongside them to help them to heal that by understanding it, seeing the bigger picture. And so I stepped out of my first job and into my second job as a coach after I'd done my coach training. And by that time, I realized that healing and health isn't just about the physical and the mental. There's also a spiritual and an emotional aspect. And when I say spiritual, a lot of people would instantly think religion, but it's about coming back into ourselves to listen to that inner voice, because it's always there for us. And a lot of us have disconnected ourselves from it. So when we address all those 4 pillars of health and healing, we absolutely can support our body to heal itself from anything.
Wow. So you actually touched on the 4 pillars of health and healing. I've had a previous guest on the podcast who has said something similar, and he calls it the quadrants of being a well-rounded human being. So I would appreciate for you to do a quick summary of the 4, or I don't know what you call it, is it the 4 elements of,
I call it the
health?
4. I call it the 4
Okay,
pillars
okay,
of
okay, the
health
4.
or healing.
Okay,
So
so what are the 4 pillars, namely?
So the physical is the one most people, including myself, go to first, and that's
That's the physical.
nutrition,
Diet,
hydration,
nutrition,
sleep, exercise, all within
yeah,
that physical
exercise.
pillar.
Okay,
The next one is the mental pillar,
the
mental
mental.
health. So
Okay.
that's what can we do for our mind to help it? So we can calm it down with gratitude, mindfulness, and meditation. But we can also stimulate it in a good way with things like learning new crafts, learning a language, doing crosswords. So keeping it active, but
Yes, that's
being
true.
conscious about our learning, what we're doing.
Use or lose.
Yes, basically, yes. So let's use it, and let's use it for our benefit, doing things that we enjoy doing. The third
The
pillar
third
is the
one.
spiritual
Mm,
pillar. And as I said, that's about coming back inside of us to that little voice and listening to it, but also aligning ourselves with our community.
mm,
That is people who we enjoy being with, who don't drain our energy, who help energize us. And then the 4th pillar is the emotional pillar, and that really is the key pillar. And
mm,
that is truly about understanding our past, forgiving anybody that needs forgiveness, including ourselves and the people who hurt us. And I'm not saying forgive and forget. I'm saying the forgiveness is for us, because we forgive within inside of us that person for not having the knowledge and skills around what they were doing that hurt us. When we can acknowledge and accept what's happened in our past, because we can't change it, it's happened. So when we can come to a place of acknowledgement and accepting what's happened to us, we can then step into a place of potentially forgiveness. Can we forgive the person? Or if not, can we forgive their soul for what they did to hurt us? Because, they possibly didn't know what they were doing. They possibly did, but they possibly didn't. We hold that trauma through the eyes of the child that we were at that time. So if we can come to a place of forgiveness, we can let go of that burden, that trauma that we've been holding on to for so long. We can actually let go of that and step into our lives without holding that weight and that trauma. within us.
It always feels like you have a burden, on your shoulders. You have a burden on your body when you are, would I say, keeping a grudge with a person or with people.
Yeah.
But like over time, getting mature emotionally, even for me personally, I tend to just try to I tend to forget a lot because I have a lot of things that I'm trying to work towards for the future. So I don't let the baggage, from the past try to weigh me down. And also I've also like noticed that mind body connection, right? So a lot of times when you're really worried about something, it could actually make physical illnesses to get aggravated. But I did chuckle a bit when you were talking about the forgive and forget thing. Just on a lighter note, some people say God forgives, but I don't forget. But there, it's life is actually too short to be, moving around keeping grudges, and it's actually has a way of, weighing you down. So why would you continue to do that? So I appreciate you, touching light on that. And talking about your book, Heal Yourself, you mentioned, uncovering hidden emotional wounds. So how did emotional healing play a role in your own physical recovery?
Because we hold our emotional trauma within us, the issues in our tissues are our emotional traumas. And when we can let go of those, we can let go with the symptoms associated with it. And often with trauma comes pain, a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-confidence, a feeling of being unloved, unvalued. And that affects how we show up in the world. So when we can understand what's happened to us and forgive and let go of it, we can then come into the child within us who went through that trauma, who is still holding that trauma, because we're talking to ourselves as an adult. But if we have to come into our younger self and help them to understand what's happened and support them and be the person that they needed during that trauma that they probably didn't get. So we can reparent our inner self. And that is where releasing the trauma magic really happens, when we can talk to that young child within us and bring it up and reparent it with love and skills. And we can extrapolate that out into doing childish things, having childlike wonder. As adults, we can go on swings and seesaws, we can skip along the promenade, we can do handstands if we're able. There's so many things that we can do in the world that a child would do, and have that childlike wonder whilst we're doing it, and just let that child out to play, to have fun that they might not have had in their younger years. And as we do that work with our inner child, we release that trauma from our tissues. So it's like the forgiveness is a part of it, but releasing the trauma from our body is magic happens, because that's where the true healing lies. When we take a pill, we don't heal, we suppress a symptom. But when we come inside of ourselves and do that inner work, true healing, lasting healing really happens.
Hmm. This is actually very, very, very deep food for thought. But something that was, bringing on my mind is the fact that me, for example, I am from Nigeria. I'm proudly Nigerian. I come from a part of the world where a lot of people, especially people in, would I say, my parents' generation, do not believe in the concept of therapy. And it has actually resulted in a lot of individuals walking, across the face of the earth with a lot of unhealed traumas. So I know this is quite relatable to people from Africa, Asia, and maybe South America. We have kind of similar cultures. What would you advise in terms of breaking cultural barrier to becoming more open-minded to, therapy in order to access, the possibilities of healing from trauma and towards a better mental well-being and may result a well-rounded health and well-being for individuals?
I think a lot of people can feel like a failure if they think they need therapy. So they become quite stoical. Now look at me, I'm dealing with it, I'm okay, there's nothing wrong with me. But actually it takes real confidence to reach out and say, I need help. And there's nothing weak about saying, I need help. It's that reaching out. And some people's trauma is that they didn't have that help and support and guidance as young people. So they did everything themselves and they learned to be strong and resilient. And they feel that reaching out to ask for help is really a sign of weakness because they're not being strong and stoical anymore. But it's really not. It's the opposite. It takes so much courage to reach out and say, I really need help. Please help me. So I would advocate for anybody to reach out for help. And when I started my own healing journey, my parents didn't have therapy, and they're in their 80s and 90s now. It wasn't the done thing. It was like your culture. It was not culturally done. And my generation, a lot of people will still not reach out, whereas the youngsters have been raised to express all their feelings and reach out and talk about it. We weren't. So reaching out really is a sign of confidence and a sign that you are ready to do the healing work, to help yourself, to unburden yourself from carrying all that weight.
So, speaking of your philosophy of self-healing, your own work, your body of work is influenced by thought leaders like Louise Hay, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton. How have their teachings shaped your healing philosophy?
Massively, because I found them when I started doing my coaching work. And I was so intrigued to start reading their books about how our mind and body is so linked, and our thoughts create our feelings create our behaviors create our beliefs. And making all of those links was, it was mind opening for me. It was something I'd never thought about before. So as part of our healing journey, we have to remember that we always have a choice. And whilst that sounds simplistic, I wish somebody had told me that, because I couldn't reach out when I was in that depression. I didn't know how to. I was so inside myself, and I didn't know what was available to me. So if somebody had said you've got a choice, I might have looked at them a bit strange, like, I feel like killing myself. What do you mean I've got a choice? Well, we can go inside and find a memory, a happy memory, something where we felt loved and valued, or we were laughing, or we were having a great time, or there was a happy experience. Go into that memory, feel those thoughts, those feelings that we had at that time. And just in doing so, it will lift our energy and our body will take on board that happiness. It's really easy to do. We can think, oh, woe is me. And don't get me wrong, I sat in victim mode for 3 years. Look at me, look what's happening to me. This is all happening to me. I'm a victim. And I sat and felt that for 3 years because I didn't know any different. I had nobody to tell me, look, we can work with this, we can do this, and think of that happy thought and feel good for a day. So we can, that their work talks about the mind and body and how we can override one. And also the Louise Hay talks about metaphysics with the work that she did in the 70s, when she realized that people with certain diseases, certain complaints, pain in certain areas were going through certain things in their lives, or they held certain beliefs. So she linked diseases to beliefs and brought them together. So if you've got this belief, then you're more likely to create this disease. Because at the end of the day, we are co-creators in our lives, whether we like it or not. So we co-create the dis-ease that we suffer. And when we can own that and take responsibility for the way we're living our lives and the thoughts that we're having and the goals that we're aiming for, when we can own that, we can radically change our lives. But we have to step out of that victim mode and think about, what is this teaching me? Why am I going through that? What is the lesson within that? And for me, as awful as that suicidal depression was for those 3 years, I saw that was my mind saying, you're done. you're no longer a nurse, you can't stay in the hospital, and this business is still aligned with nursing, and you still have to sign that nursing register to say you're going to abide by their standards. And I'm like, I just couldn't do that anymore because I wanted to help people to heal themselves naturally, like I had done from the root cause and the people in my book. So I had to step outside of that, and I didn't have the confidence to do it. And my brain went, nope, you're done now, and threw me into that depression with those thoughts. And as I came out of that and healed that by doing a lot of inner work, I realized that I went into that to change my life trajectory. I found and understood who I was, and I stepped out of nursing. I deregistered from the register of nursing,
Really?
gave
Wow.
that up after 20 years. I gave that up so that I could be who I feel I'm here to be.
That
And
was a
that's to
bold move.
help other people in a different way. It was because I only ever wanted to be a nurse. And it took me a long time to understand why I was not happy in my job as a nurse. And it was because I wasn't helping people how I wanted to help them. I was helping them with pharmaceuticals and surgery. And that's not helping them to help themselves. So stepping outside of that, I can now help them to come off the pharmaceuticals, to not have the surgery, to heal their bodies themselves. And I don't heal them, I help them to understand that their body heals itself and find the issue in their tissue, if you like, to be able to
I
heal
like the
that.
rhymes. I like the
Yes.
rhymes.
And
Good.
one of the people that I follow, I can't remember which one, talked about that, how we hold the issues in our tissues.
Interesting. I'm going to add one more to you. You're taking away the pain in Spain.
Yes, yes, I am.
Wow, wow. I really appreciate the holistic perspective, you guys have, to health and well-being. So the next question, for me is many people believe that healing without pharmaceuticals is impossible, right? And I used to be one of them.
Me too.
I used to be one of them. So I'll give you a little bit of my own, would I say history? So back in 2021, I did have an auto accident that nearly clipped my life, whiplash, somersault in vehicle. And it sort of affected my back. So I did, see it was back in my country, Nigeria. So I did see the physio for a little bit of time. But Nigeria is a warm country, so uh, it felt like, oh, it was healing, And when I came to the UK the next year, the cold exposed my frailties. I started having like really, really sharp pains, in the spine, the muscle. The muscle was always contracting, and twitching and giving very, very excruciating pains. So at some point, I did visit a chiropractor. They did some adjustments and all, and the physio. So I had this physio slash chiropractor clinic. So it's they do their adjustments, they do the massages, you feel some relief for a while, and you're back in pains. And until I got to meet a physio, this lady's from India, and then she examined my back, and when she pressed on the muscles at the back, she said, "Wow, did you have an accident?" I'm like, "Oh, I did not tell you." And then I was like, "Okay, yes, I did." And then she told me, "Oh, these muscles did not heal up properly because you weren't exercising them in the right way. So they're stiff. I can feel it." It's like, okay, okay. So I remember previously, the previous physios I used to see, they used to give me like some stretch routines. And I'll be like, wow, why are you giving me stretch routines? Like, just give me a medication that can't solve this thing. And then like, oh, I can only give you painkillers, but try to do the routines. And you know what? I look at the routines as ridiculous. Or when I got to meet the Indian physio, he told me, if you know you like yourself, do these routines that I'm going to give you. And it was funny. I did the routines, the stretches, some things as ridiculous as just raising your hands and twisting this way, twisting that way, some other stretches. And I started getting significant improvement. I was like, wow. So medicine is not the solution to every physiological problem, but it's difficult, if you don't have a mentality shift, right? So for you, right? I know you are well experienced, your career has been in healthcare. What do you say to the skeptics of natural healing?
And I go back to the cut and the bruise. When we cut ourselves, we don't think I must take that to the doctor, unless it needs stitches, obviously, this gaping wound and it's pouring with blood. If we get a scratch and it bleeds, we know that we can just clean it up and let our body do its thing, and it will heal. When we bruise ourselves, the same, we know that our body will heal it. So why would it not heal anything else? And I was a skeptic too. I totally believed in medicine until I was challenged and I started reading about people who changed their diet, who changed their lifestyle, who were healing things like autoimmune and cancer. I'm like, well, wow, that's amazing, because until I was 41, I had no idea that any of that was possible. I was totally in that medical model box. That's all there was. There was nothing outside of it. It just didn't ever occur to me that it was even possible. So for people who are skeptics, I would say, please buy my book and read
Wow.
about myself and the 74 other people who've healed multiple sclerosis, cancer, Lyme, autoimmune, ALS, or as we call it, motor neuron disease in the UK, asthma, allergies, stroke, so many different health problems, mental health, and we've all healed naturally. There's a couple of people that were on medication and then tailed off the medication and took a natural stance, but predominantly most people have healed without medication. And I also have a podcast as well that's an extension of my book called Heal Yourself with Sarah Dawkins. And I continue to share people who have healed themselves naturally without pharmaceuticals to share with the world. Because I've had a couple of people say to me, well, how do we know that these people are even real in your book? Well, most people have provided not just a website, but other contact details for themselves. And I thought, on my podcast, I'm sharing real people sharing their own healing. So people, the audience, can
The
see
fact
these
speaks for
people.
itself.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes.
So sorry to interrupt you real
No,
quick.
it's okay.
So link to your book, the link to your podcast, and the link to your website are going to be in the description of this podcast. So please, go and engage with Sarah Dawkins. Thank you very much, guys. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. And thank you for the privilege of speaking to you on your podcast. And I would just like to sum up by saying the biggest thing that we can do for ourselves is to look at what stresses us. Because stress, we associate things outside of us as stress. But actually, it's the things outside of us that we can't control that we allow ourselves to have a reaction to. And ultimately, we can only control ourselves, our thoughts and our behaviors. We have no control over the rest of the world, things, situations, people. We just can't control it. So if we can come back into ourselves, control ourselves, take responsibility for our thoughts, our actions, and our behaviors, we can help ourselves to limit the stress response we have, knowing that we have no control and it's not our responsibility to control anybody and anything outside of ourselves. Because stress is a killer. What it does is it causes inflammation in our body. Inflammation is the root cause of all dis-ease. So if we can de-stress ourselves by understanding what we can control and what we can't control, we can have a massive and profound effect on our lives.
So stress. I have another line, I think on my WhatsApp profile, I put there, I am too blessed to be stressed, because stress actually does kill, and yeah, people don't realize it. It's actually always good to have effective stress management techniques. Very, very, very important. But what are some, common techniques or practices you recommend, to your, would I say, clients or patients now who are starting their self-healing journey?
When we look at the whole picture, the 4 pillars of health, it can look massively overwhelming. There's so much to do. So just pick one small thing and just spend 30 days doing that one small thing. Because when we feel overwhelmed, our subconscious mind jumps into our conscious mind and says, oh, I'm going to protect you from that. You don't need to do that. But when we just pick one small thing, our subconscious mind doesn't get triggered. So we're more able to do it without procrastinating, without finding reasons why not. I mean, it could be just something simply as stand up and walk on the spot for 1 minute every day. It could be go for a walk outside. It could be drink more water. It could be sit for 5 minutes each day and just do some deep breathing and just tap into how your body's feeling and see what messages it's got for you. Just choose one thing and start with that. And then when you've mastered that, then look at what else you can add, because every tiny little thing that you do impacts your mind, impacts your body, or it impacts your body, which then impacts your mind. So whatever we're doing, whether it's a mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical work, it's all intertwined, and that's how holistic healing works. When you address one area, it spills out into all the other areas and has an effect on every single area. So choose something small and just do it for 30 days and then add more to it.
Wow, I think this is actually brilliant, and it actually resonates with me personally, and with a conversation I had with a friend of mine who is a physio. Her name is Cindy Hernandez. She's a physio that actually works with combat sports athletes, athletes in the UFC, Bellator, PFL, elite level athletes basically. And she is a very big advocate of breath work and outdoor walks. And I am also a big enthusiast of those techniques. They actually help not just the physical body, but also the mental health. So it's more like you're tackling two quadrants at the same time. And of course, for some people who are religious, when they go on those long walks as well, they could, meditate spiritually or pray, along the process. And it's actually very wholesome for wholesome well-being. But for you, like, can you walk us through a typical process of how you help someone uncover emotional wounds that are stored up in their body?
So my sessions are done as conversation, either face-to-face locally where I live or on a video call. And I ask clients to tell me their story and allow them to outpour their story without interruptions. Because for a lot of people, just being seen, heard, and validated is healing in itself. So by allowing them to outpour, they get to feel seen, heard, and validated. When they finish speaking, quite often red flags have raised in a couple of areas that they've spoken about. So I'll take them back and ask them for more information around those areas and to get them to look at the situations with the skills and knowledge they have now as the adult, because we hold our trauma deep inside of us through the eyes of the child that we were. And we only see the details of that trauma. We don't see the bigger picture, what was going on, who was involved, what were their lives like, what was going on. So when we can extrapolate all of that out and look at it in the bigger picture, it helps them to see that, yes, they were hurt, but quite often the people who hurt them were also hurt and traumatized and haven't reached out for therapy or done anything about it. And when we hold our wounds and we don't heal them, they spill out, our emotions spill out through triggers and over emotional responses. And quite often we don't even see that. We just see that we're angry. Something's making us angry and we don't evaluate what's
Transferred
making us
aggression.
angry.
Transferred aggression, and then we tend to implode and explode.
Yeah, like where has that come from? What belief is underpinning that, and what formed that belief? Where did it come from? Is it really yours, or have you borrowed it from somebody else? So when we can dig into that and understand that, we're able to look at our core beliefs and see, do they actually work for us now, or do we need to change them? So like my core belief was I need medicines and doctors for 41 years. And then I saw, with small changes, real results in my body, and I started finding other people, and then I started healing more health problems. So I changed my core belief to I don't need a doctor because my body heals itself. But I do want to point out, and it's really important, doctors and hospitals do have a role in accidents, emergencies, and traumas. We do need them for those. But for everything
A&E.
outside of those, we can do so much for ourselves when we take responsibility for ourselves, our health, and our well-being.
That's actually very, very, very true. I think big shout out to the doctors and nurses, right? But I've noticed something, especially here in the UK, especially here in London. I think the healthcare facilities are quite overwhelmed, and it has sort of made a lot of doctors not empathetic to patients, and for me, I think that's quite worrisome. I was at the A, I think sometime last year, and because it was so overwhelmed, I wasn't attended to, and I had to like check myself out, or how do you call it in medical terms when you leave the hospital? I think when you check in, you're admitted. When you are checking out, I don't know the technical term. And the nurses told me you have to sign a piece of paper that you're checking out against the doctor's advice. I'm like, man, I've been here 8 hours plus. And I checked that out. The next day when I came back in, they said, oh, you have to start the process again. And this doctor I met, I was so amazed. The guy just kept a poker face. Was like, why didn't you stay yesterday? I'm like, oh, I was here more than 8 hours. And then he was like, it means you don't like yourself. I'm like, excuse me. Can't you at least try to be empathetic? I think that's a conversation for maybe like another podcast episode. But back to your book, in your own book, you shared, stories of ordinary people healing themselves, in extraordinary ways. Is there a particular story that deeply inspired you?
One that really, really spoke to me was a guy who was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. He had the x-rays on his brain, which showed the lesions of multiple sclerosis. He was in a wheelchair and lost a lot of weight, quite a thin man. And his brother took him to the doctors to, I don't know if it was a regular checkup or he was going to see what else could be done because he wasn't getting any better. I think he was starting to get worse. And they both watched the doctor go on the internet and search on the internet what is available for multiple sclerosis. And they thought, wow, if the doctor's doing that, we can do that.
But why do people get upset with doctors doing these things or professionals generally? Because me, I'm a professional as well. I'm a chartered accountant, right? I understand that I don't know everything when it comes to accounting, but I know where to get information, if I am unsure, if I am uncertain. There are situations in which you know what to do, but sometimes you need, a confirmation regarding certain situations. But then people, when they see professionals consulting, internet-based sources, they feel unsafe. I don't know, like you are a nurse as well, and you know that you don't know every answer or every prescription to every symptom, and of course there are multiple there are multiple diagnoses, there are multiple symptoms that you could prescribe maybe certain, medications depending on the properties of these medications. But now putting you back on the spot, like how do you on the professional side, right? We have a different lens, different perspective. Like how do you feel about the layman feeling unsafe with professionals, consulting internet sources?
I don't know that he felt unsafe. My takeaway from it was if the doctor can search the internet for answers, so can I.
But the doctor is learned, and
Yeah,
experienced. And
yeah.
okay, if you have like multiple recommendations, the doctor can use his professional discretion, his professional judgment, right, to assess, right? Conduct a proper risk assessment and decide what medication would probably be appropriate, and also depending on the symptoms that the
And
patient is experiencing.
and that's where the doctors are stuck because they are wearing goggles that only show them answers in the pharmaceutical arena.
Yes, that's actually true.
Whereas when we search the internet, we're looking for anything and everything, any possibility, because we're open-minded.
Hmm.
The doctor's only looking for pharmaceuticals and treatments within that medical model, interventions. So for me, and that's how my journey started because I'd never thought to search the internet for holistic healing, because it never crossed my mind until somebody opened my eyes to it. And I suppose the doctors, I know when people can have a radical healing, the doctors say it's a fluke or it's magical. But many doctors cannot accept that these people healed themselves by dealing with their own issues and taking responsibility. Most doctors still believe that you need a pill, and this pill will treat that, and that pill will treat that, and that intervention will cut that out or put that in. And they're quite limited in their scope of what they will advise patients. So if somebody's got a health problem, I'm all for looking on the internet and finding what you can do for yourself outside of pharmaceuticals to help yourself. It's about taking responsibility back and understanding. I go back to the co-creation. We co-create the dis-ease in our body. So if we've created it, then we can heal it. We're the problem, but we're also the solution to our problem.
So, just on a lighter note, while you were talking about people uh, searching on the internet their symptoms, it reminded me of a friend recently who was searching their symptoms on the internet, and I think they saw some terrible terminal illness. I'm like, oh, and then they were freaking out, like, wow. So, there's something with layman just googling the symptoms, and sometimes they now get a freak out because they see certain internet guidance that is probably indicating something very severe,
Yeah.
whereas it's not something maybe very serious all of the time. So it's a bit here and there, but for me, it just reminds me of funny situations like that. But there's a reason why the professionals are there, right? Yeah, for proper guidance. And of course, you mentioned experiencing suicidal despair, right? So how
Yeah.
did you experience, how did you address, your mental health, right? And how did it play a role in that healing process?
So I didn't really address my mental health because I didn't know how to. The
Mm,
doctor wanted to medicate me, and because I was suicidal, he asked me to go back every month to make sure I was still alive.
mm,
We had dogs, so I had to get out and walk the dogs. I wasn't working at this point because I was in such an awful state.
mm,
So I walked dogs twice a day. And I think it's because I was outside and walking the dogs that played a part in my own healing.
mm.
And every single day, come rain or shine, as it is in the UK, predominantly rain, that, I had to do it.
Mostly gloomy weather.
It is gloomy. But after I don't know, because I was so inside myself, I just lost track of everything. And I do believe that because I was outside and walking the dogs, that I started to feel lighter, feel better,
Mm,
because I'm breathing the fresh air and I'm outside. And one day I remember looking up at the trees, and there were flower buds on the trees and leaves starting to come. It was spring. And it's the first time I'd actually noticed something outside of myself, because
mm,
normally I just head down, walk the dogs. I had a set route. It didn't take too long. And I didn't want to talk to anybody either. So I think starting to see the buds and leaves on the trees forming helped me to feel better. And it was at that point then I started looking at mindfulness and gratitude, but I didn't
mm,
realize what I was doing. It was almost like I was doing it intuitively. It was only about a year later when I look back, I'm like, wow, I was being mindful there and practicing gratitude, looking for the tiny bit of blue sky in the grey, and just being thankful that I was able to walk the dogs, that I was able to see and smell the flowers of spring. So that in itself started to help me feel lighter. And then it was not long after that, then I started doing meditation to
mm.
dare to look at the future I wanted to create for myself, rather than living in this black hole that I'd been in for a few years. And that's how I started my own journey. And it was totally without help, because I didn't know about health coaching.
Wow. So I really, really appreciate what you talked about, the walks with the dogs, because it's something I can very, very much relate to. And I'd like for you to, if possible, maybe make a logical explanation about this connection. Because for me, I have noticed that anytime I connect with nature, it has a refreshing, rejuvenating, a re-energizing effect. But it's something I have not been able to explain. Connecting with nature just has a way of motivating you, inspiring you, and just giving you an unexplainable new found energy. Or is it something you are able to find a logical explanation to?
Nature nourishes our soul, and that's why we feel good. But nature is full of positive energy.
Mm,
So when we go into that, because everything in the world is energy, including ourselves, everything is energy. So when we're in that negative space and we go into nature, it's full of positive energy and we're
mm,
connecting with that. And if we can walk barefoot or even touch the ground with our hand or hug a tree or, touch anything in nature, we absorb that positive energy even more than just walking through it.
mm.
So that's how it helps to lift us up, because we're absorbing all that positive energy.
So for people who are struggling with emotional trauma, chronic stress, so what first steps would you advise them for beginning their own healing journey?
I would say go and take a walk outside, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever you can do. Go and walk outside. Take your shoes off, touch the ground, sit on the ground, touch a tree, hug a tree, and put your hands on the ground. Go to the beach, walk in the sea, walk on the beach barefoot, sit on the beach. Just connect with nature.
Now, I look at your background as a nurse, and I understand something with us professionals. We always like to, would I say like to? It's not about us liking it. We always have to rather adopt, methodology in terms of our approach to doing our work. So, like, how do you balance, the mental, the emotional, the physical healing, in your coaching practice?
For me personally, I do what lights me up, what makes me feel good. And for me, that's walking in nature and helping others to help themselves. I get
Mm,
such a lot out of seeing other people understand where their problems are at the root cause and heal it. That truly nourishes my soul, and my heart just swells for them, seeing them do
mm,
that. So I get everything from that, the physical, because I'm with people, the community, the emotional, I'm watching them heal. The spiritual, I see them doing the inner work and reconnecting. And the mental, I watch the processes that they go through. And that really, really fills me up. And
mm,
for myself, it's about doing more of what I love. So walking outside in nature, going for a walk along the beach. I've got another rescue dog, so taking my dog for a walk, going out for days with my husband and literally just walking through the woods or down the beach. Just the real simple things is really helps me. I don't need to go out shopping. I don't need to go out for a meal. Just being outside in that space and just absorbing the energy and the feeling from it. We've quite often get blue skies and sunshine here. There's a lot of green
yes.
space around us in the mountains. So I just love where I live. I love what I do.
So with this description, it feels more like an art and a science. But in terms of modern day science, how does this support the idea that our thoughts and emotions can impact our physical health?
Because it's all connected. Everything is holistic. So our thoughts create our emotions, create our behaviors, and create dis-ease in our body. It's the literature out there supports that.
Bruce Lipton?
Yes, you read my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Dr.
Bruce Lipton, he's one of your influences and he talks about the
Yes,
biology of belief. So, yeah,
absolutely,
so like
absolutely. And it
how
all starts with our belief.
mhm,
Yeah, if we believe we're going to be sick, we're going to be sick. If we believe we can't heal, we're going to not heal.
mm,
But if we believe we can heal, we absolutely can heal.
interesting. So, do you think there's actually room for integration between natural healing methods and the conventional medicine? So, how can we have, what do you call it now? Yeah, there's a word I'm looking for. A synergy, yeah.
Yeah,
Synergy,
that's
that's
the
the
word,
word. Yeah.
synergy. I think there can, because for people who believe they need Western medicine, they need those pills, they need to see the doctor, they can take those and supplement with holistic practices. But for people who believe they can heal themselves without a doctor, obviously outside of trauma and accidents and emergencies, they absolutely can heal themselves. I mean, like I said, I've got people healing cancer, multiple sclerosis, motor neuron disease, lots of different autoimmune diseases. And yet we're told in Western medicine we can't heal those. But I myself have healed them. People in my book have healed them. So we're proof that we can heal. But it comes down to our beliefs.
And controls the body.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you are a religious person, but for me, I'm a Christian, and this actually just reminds me of a part of the Bible that says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Basically, in faith, in
As he
religious,
thinketh, so he doeth.
yeah,
As he thinketh, so he doeth.
yeah, in religious, scripture, it is actually emphasized the power of belief, the power of the mind. In Hebrew, I think 11 verse 1, the Bible says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And of course, further in that chapter, it goes on to say that without faith, it is impossible to please God. Like having that belief, having that faith is actually very, very important. It says with faith, you can move mountains, right? If you have a little faith as a mustard seed. So it means that we always have to be able to believe and, conceive, believe, achieve. If you don't believe it, how can you achieve it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a religious person. I believe in spiritualism, but I still believe in faith. And the faith is the faith in our abilities, the faith in what we can do, the faith in the knowledge that we can heal ourselves, we can go for that job interview, we can climb that mountain. Having faith in ourselves and our own abilities can help us to literally move mountains.
Interesting. Like, what are the major misconceptions people have about self-healing based off your experience?
I think a lot of people don't know where to start, and they struggle. They might not believe in it because they don't know how it works, or they don't know where to start. So it's just about helping people to open themselves up to things that their mind might not be able to perceive, to things that might seem impossible. If we can just open ourselves up and be receptive to the information coming in, because our own cognitive biases seek out information to value what we believe, to reinforce what we believe. So if we believe we need medicine, we will seek out information to show that we need medicine. But if we can be open to our body heals itself and seek out information that validates that, then that helps us to look at, are our core beliefs true to us? Are they borrowed from somebody else? And 99.9% of the time they're borrowed from our caregivers. So if we can evaluate what our belief is, where it's come from, and does it still work for us, it helps us to be able to be more receptive to what other information is out there.
But in terms of criticism, and of course, criticism is actually very common in the scientific community. So have you had, critics, pushbacks from the medical community regarding your work?
I stepped out of the medical community in 2021, but I haven't worked in a hospital since 2017. My work, I published my book in 22. So I don't speak to the doctors that I knew. And I worked in several different hospitals as an agency nurse for a little while. So I haven't received criticism because I don't speak to doctors.
Wow, that's interesting. So, in terms of the mistakes, right? Common mistakes people tend to make when trying to embark on the journey of healing themselves naturally. What are those common mistakes people make?
I think part of the problem is they don't know where to start and what to do. And a lot of people like myself go straight into the physical. I've changed my diet, I'm doing some exercise, I'm eating what I think is, or I'm being told is healthy, and I'm still sick. Because they're not addressing the other pillars of health, they're stuck in the physical pillar of health. And that will take people so far, but it won't take people to total healing.
So for a layman, say like myself, I'm confused. I don't know where to start from. So what would be your pep talk, your advice?
So I would ask you to tell me your story. And then I would ask you to give me more information around certain scenarios so that you can start to see where the origins of your issues are. And then elaborating on those, I could then suggest certain things or ask you to think about what might be happening, what might be the cause, what thoughts or beliefs you have around those things. So it's about working with my clients because everybody's different, but
So
we
how
all
about
have.
people who feel hopeless? Some people have literally lost hope on themselves. How do you help those kind of people?
So for people who've lost hope, I ask them to sit in that space without any hope, no hope whatsoever,
Hmm.
and describe it and tell me about it and feel into it and share their despair with me. And then I ask them to imagine they had hope and project that into the future. And what kind of a future can they see with hope? And then ask them what it would take for them to step into that future. If they could see it and feel it and visualize it, why could they not bring it around to them? But we have to feel it to heal it. So we have to sit with that despair, with that pain, with that loss of hope. We have to sit with all of those symptoms, those feelings, and we have to really feel into them. We can't just flip it around and turn it into a positive. We have to literally sit and feel it and then look at what our alternatives are.
So if you could give one or two key takeaways from your book, Heal Yourself, what would that be?
You have to believe you can heal in order to heal. So if you don't believe you can heal, where has that belief come from? What's the origin of it? And what's the evidence behind it that backs up your belief on why you can't heal? And then I ask you to look for evidence that suggests you could possibly heal. Go and look on the internet, buy my book, read around people who've healed the health problems that you've got with an open mind. Because a lot of people can think, oh, well, I'm different. I've tried all that. I'm different. I can't heal. Well, actually, yes, we all are different. But if we don't believe we can heal and we're trying something, then our belief will overpower what we're trying. And we'll go, see, told you, couldn't heal. I'm special. We're all special. But if we can evaluate that belief, understand its origins and flip it, or even just open it up and find information that's counter to that belief, and then start to read more around that, watch more videos around it, and help ourselves to open our mind. Because when we sit with that closed mind, I'm a victim, I can't heal, nobody can help me, we really wallow in that and it stops our healing, and we co-create more of that. So we need to look at what we can do for ourselves to help ourselves.
So you actually talked about evidence, right? And this is on a lighter note. In my country, Nigeria, there's this joke we have. They say, if you no get evidence, you go explain tire. It's pidgin English. I can explain it to you in proper English, right? Are you able to decipher it a bit? It's pidgin, but you can pick it. If you no
Yeah.
get evidence, you go explain tire. Are you
Tire
getting?
as in tired?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it means if you don't have evidence, you're going to explain till you get tired. You
Yeah.
keep explaining and explaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your book is evidence that healing yourself is actually a strong possibility, and that body of work is highly appreciated and highly recommended by me. So look into the description and go get a copy right now. So what's the most inspiring feedback you have ever received from someone who has used your methods to heal themselves?
That they thought I was blunt, which I can be, and I don't mean to be, but I like to help people to get to the core of the problem. But then once they sat and pondered that and understood what I was talking about, they radically changed their core beliefs to the fact that although they're sick, they're not. How does she frame it? She says, I might be battling a disease, but I'm not sick. So she understood what was going on in her body, but she shifted her mindset from I'm sick to I'm not sick. I'm just working with this, whatever's going on in my body. So she had a radical core belief shift, and her health just took an upturn, and she actually stepped into a new job, and she's doing incredibly well.
Interesting. Okay, also on the lighter note, my bank account may not have much money in it, but I am not poor.
Yes, I am rich because I have a roof over my head, I have people who love me, and I have food in my fridge. That
Well,
constitutes me being rich.
I'm telling you, you're just a rich man with a cash flow constraint issue.
But when you go, I'm thankful for all the cash making its way to me now. I'm thankful for all the work coming to me. I'm thankful for all the opportunities, for all the doors that are being opened in front of me. And
Hmm.
just give gratitude.
Yes, yes, gratitude. Anyways, if you've ever seen my body of work, I keep saying this in almost every podcast. Gratitude is good attitude. I am very, very big on gratitude. I'm big
Yeah.
on gratitude. I'm big on kindness. I'm big on respect. I'm big on hospitality. Very, very important values to me. So we are approaching the end of this session, and of course, I have rapid fire questions for you. This is a rapid fire round. So if you could have dinner with any of the health leaders you admire, Louise Hay, Greg Burden, Dr. Joe Dispenza, or Dr. Bruce Lipton, who would it be and why?
It would be Dr. Bruce Lipton. And I follow Dr. Gabor Mate as well. But it would be Bruce Lipton to find out more of the scientific background in the biology of our beliefs.
Anyways, on a lighter note, I thought it was actually Bruce Lipton because you'd have the opportunity to share a Lipton tea during that dinner. So, what's your favorite daily wellness routine?
Walking out in nature.
I like that. I love that. So, one health myth you wish would disappear forever.
You can't heal yourself.
Wow, that's great. So, what is next for Sarah Dawkins? Any upcoming projects, books, or new healing techniques you're exploring?
I'm actually in the process of researching for a second book about the everyday person's thoughts and beliefs around empathy.
Hmm, interesting. And of course, empathy is closely connected to emotional intelligence. And yeah, that's actually very important for a lot of us to have. There are people with high IQs but low
Yeah,
emotional intelligence.
EQs. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, how can the listeners, how can the viewers connect with you for coaching and to learn more about your book and your podcast?
If you go to my website, www.sarahdawkins.com, SARAHDAWKINS.com, all my links to everything's on there.
Oh, wow. Fantastic link tree. So, finally, if you could leave our audience with one powerful message about healing and self belief, what would that message be?
Please take a deep look inside yourself. And if you don't believe you can heal, ask yourself where the origin of that has come from. Why don't you believe? What evidence has manifested or presented itself to you? And what could be the reverse of that? What would your life look like if you could heal? And can you start to believe that it is possible for you to heal?
Interesting. For me, like I said, gratitude is good attitude. When a person shares their time with you, they share their life with you because time is the measurement of life. So thank you very much for sharing your time, your life with us today on the session. It's been educative. It's been educational. It's been inspirational as well. So do you want to leave a shout out to anybody before you leave?
Do I want to?
Do you want to leave a shout out to anybody out there before you leave? Appreciate anybody.
I just appreciate everybody for being who they are. Some people have shaped my lives in a good way. Other people have shown me how I don't want to live my life. So I am grateful to everybody and anybody who I have come into contact with throughout my whole life.
Oh, wow. And of course, speaking of everybody and anybody, please, if you've come to the end of the podcast, please like, comment, and share with anybody and everybody. Share with your friends, your family, your foes. And of course, we'll keep working hard to bring to you wonderful wonderful, resourceful content. So for me, it's peace and love. And of course, thank you very much again, Sarah Dawkins, the author of Heal Yourself.
Thank you.